It is finally that week. This week has finally come. We're on the road, the ending stop to Impact Wrestling's pay-per-view. I can't talk. Rebellion, this historic event that could change everything. But we got a lot to still talk about. And a lot of questions had to be answered once again this week. So without further ado, me and Miranda, or Miranda and I, because proper English, we're going to get into today's show right now. What's up, everybody? It is Niger alongside of Miranda, and we're here to give you all our Impact Wrestling weekly review, the hottest topic that has come out this week in regards to Impact Wrestling, as we've been doing our new format. If you've been following us since day one, where we're just now talking about and tackling the hottest topic coming out of Impact Wrestling this week. Now that Impact has moved to Thursdays, Impact on Access TVs to Thursdays, we have moved our review to Fridays. Nonetheless, if you're looking to know when we're going to go live and do this weekly and you want to be a part of the show, definitely subscribe, hit the notification bell, and just stay on the lookout during your lunchtime, depending on what coast you're on. If you're on the East Coast, and you're probably looking at about the time you're getting off of work, and if you're on the West Coast, and you're looking about your lunchtime.
We are a coast-to-coast operation. That's how
right.
we got you covered. We are coast to coast, so we got you.
Right. Except we're a little bit more considerate because we're not putting on Lakers games at the very middle of the night like we get here,
That's
which
true.
is like prime time there for you all, which is the most annoyingest thing to me.
It's annoying, but hey, that's just one of the things that happens out in the West Coast,
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'll trade you though. I'll heartbeat.
Yes, everything's good over here, and yeah, I'm really excited to talk. I mean, this is the final review. We had the go home show before Impact Rebellion's pay-per-view for this Sunday, and I mean, you started off talking about it exactly in the right tone. This can change the world of professional wrestling. This could change the course of Impact Wrestling. It can change the course of AEW. It could just change the course of the landscape of pro wrestling as we know it.
Yeah. So again, Rebellion is this Sunday, April 25th. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. The world will be watching. It's on pay-per-view. You can catch it everywhere. I think it's also on Fight TV as well, too. Yeah, it is on Fight. So you have an abundance of ways in order to watch this historic event. Now, yes, the card itself is stacked. That's not even a question. But the main event is what the world is going to be tuned into, and that's Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega, title versus title. We've been covering this extensively since, December, this was the first announced. Yeah. And since we knew, at some point, something big was going to happen, we had all of our theories, our hopes and possibilities, and a lot of it didn't come to fruition. A lot of mine didn't come to fruition. And there's been a lot of discrepancy as to what this partnership is, and the forbidden door being now torn down, and whatever that means, and how that's kind of we definitely got a comment about that. But we got to talk about, now that we're coming up into this pay-per-view, which I cannot wait till we review next week. We have to talk about the performance of them getting to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that we've been harsh about this, rightfully so. So we're going to kind of roundtable this just a little bit, freestyle, take the format out of it just a little bit. And I'm going to start by saying that I have not been pleased about AEW's contribution to this.
Yeah.
This is clearly Kenny Omega or Thanos Omega coming to collect all the gold, as I've been joking about through all this time, and Tony Khan just being the money pit for him. And regardless to that, it's been about them sort of invading Impact and making their presence known. Tony Khan getting a whole gimmick and whatnot, and Kenny doing what he does, the ring collector or the belt collector thing. And then it's like, but you go to AEW and it doesn't exist. And I kept saying, if you want to build this up to be the big fight, the big match, the clashes of the worlds, the Manny Pacquiao versus the Floyd Mayweather matchup, when you had Showtime and HBO coming together to make it work, the impossible to be done of the two biggest fighters, and then now you have two promotions has never done anything of this caliber, title versus title, winner takes all. They promise that there will be a definitive winner.
Yeah.
But one promotion is acting like it never even happened.
It doesn't even exist. It's in its own. I mean, essentially, it's like a multiverse that happens in within the same week. That on Thursdays it exists, and on Wednesdays it doesn't. And I think that you've labeled what I think of the majority of fans have felt disappointed in this buildup. And there was some interesting comments made. You talk about Tony Khan and being in, character on Impact and not so much on AEW too. So continuity really blurring the lines on a week-to-week basis. Whether this was meant as a true comment or a little bit in character, Tony mentioned when asked about why AEW doesn't promote Impact, talked about, they pay Impact money to have these advertisements on there. Then this is not a partnership. It's a business deal. So the way that they talk about this Forbidden Door was this big, event that was about partnership and the better of wrestling. And just within that description, that negates that. And it's not about an open door. It's about building a business relationship where you just bought advertisement on another wrestling company to try and get their fans to watch your show. That is not a forbidden door. So in some ways, that does help for me clear up why we haven't seen any Impact promotion on AEW.
Call it straight.
But at the same time, then call it for what it is, not for what this imaginary version of it that you want it to be. And even then, you could have used the last show, one show, to do that. So now are you saying that New Japan paid AEW to have Kenta come on? Is that why Kenta came? Because New Japan paid?
Point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
There's just some continuity with this that, you're absolutely right. It all happened in the world of Impact and nothing happened on AEW. The video package that we got this week was on AEW. They did air it once, but even then, it wasn't talked about on commentary. It wasn't mentioned in story. There was just so much to it that they could have done for free that they decided not to. And that's a conscious decision. They consciously decided not to incorporate it on this week's episode of AEW and pushed it to the moon on Impact. So
many comments. First of all, that commercial that ran 30 seconds, it's a TV spot. Commercial, no. TV spot, yes. And I can definitely draw a ton of analogies. So for all my nerds out there, I mean, this is exactly what the CW Arrowverse did when it was Arrow, The Flash. And then you had a Supergirl just wandering out in a whole nother channel. You're like, wait, are these connected? And then when they did bring her over, and then they had the Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think, whatever the first one was, I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earth. And he was like, wait, where's Black Lightning? He's definitely part of this. You're just like, what is happening here? Like, but like, essentially, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't proclaim to have done something, but you really didn't. I mean, another analogy which will truly hurt some people's feelings for all my frats out there. You can't say you're part of a fraternity sorority and you pledge, but you actually skated and you just paid your way in. It's not the
Mm.
same process.
That's
It's
a
not
good
the same
point.
authentic
Exactly.
feel.
It's not. You paid your way in. It's a business dealing. It's
It's
not
a
a,
business deal. You didn't earn it. You
yeah.
didn't. It wasn't for the better good of the decision you made
Because
or the brotherhood or
exactly,
sisterhood
because
of joining.
yes, because when you talk about partnership, there's some equilibrium. There's some,
Good word.
crossover. There's the ability to work together that benefits both. And when you really look at it, at the end of the day, Impact has been putting the majority of the work into this, and AEW, like you mentioned, paid. And if that's the words that Tony Khan has using, again, whether that is in character or not, that is the perception, and that also clears up why we haven't seen anything on AEW television, except the fact that the Good Brothers are on there. And even then, like you mentioned, it's a soccer loan. AEW is paying Impact, so I and even then, there's no mention really of the Good Brothers being a part of Impact when they're on AEW on a weekly basis. So I feel like a little duped as far as the description of this and almost
Uh,
the lead up to it.
Almost makes you think like, did y'all lose the title because that's what AEW wanted, so they didn't have to mention it?
Mm,
But look, I'm gonna shift just a little bit here on this. I will say this: of the build up to this point, absolutely hats off to the people at Impact for
yes.
continuously staying relevant, staying afloat, showing why they're the most resilient, top one of the top wrestling promotions out there. Through the shifting of channels, through the loss of talent, through some of the curveballs that they've been thrown, and much like D'Lo said on commentary, like they've taken a lot of hits and
Yeah.
whatnot, but they continue to
Yeah.
stand, and as long as they have their fearless leader, they'll be fine. And I mean, how at this point now, regardless if the AEW folks don't know who Rich Swann is, and hopefully, we'll see something of that to change. But like for the folks that do know Rich Swann, his story is very synonymous to the reason you want him as your champion, you want him
Hmm.
as the leader of your company, because he embraces and embodies that same moniker of
Hmm.
resiliency. He's been through
Yeah.
tough things where he could have easily been, shall I say, canceled. And he's been through, a rough upbringing of 45 minutes up the road in Baltimore, Maryland. And he's proud of that. And he's and again, he's African American. He's a champ of a major
Yeah.
promotion. These are very big things that burdens, sort of say, that he has to carry and continue to prove. And now he's going against, the wrestling god, should we
Hmm.
say, and he has to prove himself again to a
Yeah.
whole nother audience of folks who may not know who he is. And then here's just the worst part about it. If he wins, then he shows up and people's like, wait, who?
Yep. And who you are?
And it's
How
like,
do we know you?
what,
But
like,
you,
it's almost like this. It is essentially like a house show is taking place and the
mm,
champions change hand. And then the next day you hear like, did you know that?
did you hear that? Yes,
Yeah,
it is. You're
huh?
very right. It's a house show that's being aired live on pay per view and Fight TV. That but you make a good point about Rich Swan. I have really enjoyed seeing him, especially over the past 2 weeks, seeing how he has handled all of this. I think his promos have been fantastic. The way the company has thrown their support behind him as their champion, and I know we got to talk about the special appearance this week by Moose, who we
Yep,
haven't
you know
seen
it.
in weeks, to kind of acknowledge, yes, that Rich Swan won. He is now the representative of Impact Wrestling, and Moose hopes that he wins. But if he doesn't, then
He
there's
has
some
to
trouble.
answer. I
And
this
that intrigues me. That really, really
Me too.
intrigues me. And so I think they've done such a great job of bringing Moose back into the fold. But I they've done such a fantastic job, and Rich Swan himself really showing how much of an underdog he is, to the
Yep.
point where his whole career. And even though size wise, you look at him and Kenny Omega, and there isn't any, visually, this is not Andre Hogan type. This is not, two gargantuan men, but these are both very technically skilled,
Mm-hmm.
consistent, and just incredibly dedicated men to the world of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
They go about it in very different ways too, where Rich is a lot more humble. He's a lot more of the everyday guy, and has struggled through so much, whereas Kenny Omega is flashy and flamboyant and annoying. So that dynamic has played very, very well too. So Impact has done everything that they could, and to Kenny's credit, as well, Don Callis. I mean, they've played their roles as the
Yeah.
cocky heels very, very well. The
Nothing.
dynamic
Nothing
has
against
been
them at
set up.
all.
Yeah, the dynamic has been set up very well. I think our biggest complaint is the platform. There's multiple platforms that this could have been on, and we even talked about it last week too, where it could have been on the YouTube shows. Like, the fact that AEW has a lot more ground to cover and they consciously decided not to, undervalues and undermines seemingly
Thank
the
you.
work that Impact
Thank
keeps
you.
trying to do to elevate this.
There's a couple of things I wanna piggyback off of on that too. First of all, I'm about to really put over Rich Swann real quick, and call it whatever you want, but he's the homie. And when you talk about dedication here, I done seen this man wrestle in Hawaii and come back home. And I mean, if you've ever flown to Hawaii, the jet lag is absolutely real. Vice either way, coming into it or leaving out. I'm sorry, I seen him wrestle here and then get on a plane to wrestle in Hawaii. And then I seen him back in Texas, and when he pulled the injury, and like he had a severe injury with and this is pre-COVID world, when a lot of people are walking around, he's walking around in crutches, and he's still very visible, very
Yeah.
in very good spirit, very approachable, and wants to meet the fans when he could be bummed out galore because of the circumstances that he's in, considering he has to pull from a major match because of it. And everything that they say about his story is entirely true. That's what's crazy to me, is that like they're not really running a gimmick here. He's legitimately telling
Yeah.
his story, and you may not recognize that, but you will appreciate it, that like he's a hard worker and a damn good performer, and without a question, he's a person that you want to represent your brand. So like the fact that the idea of undervaluing him, I know he's not taking it personal, and it's damn
No.
sure hard for me as a fan and anybody else to not take it personal. But best believe on Sunday, he's going to put out one of the biggest performances of his life, and it's going to change
Yeah.
everything. It will. And then for Moose, I've been like this, like please don't let
Yes.
him leave Impact. And I'm very supportive of wherever he goes. Big fan of him since day one. ROH to coming to Impact. But I was always so worried, like, dang, after he lost, where would he go? And everyone's ready to give him a check. But the fact of how they did this, just like you said, the fact that they kept him on ice and he comes back and gives him this major endorsement, this was the sealant to solidify the build of what Impact did
Yeah.
coming
Yes.
up into this point. I feel like Moose, I mean, because we had Eddie Edwards, who you obviously is another face of Impact, but Moose coming out and saying, you better do this. I mean,
Yeah.
if you didn't know no better, that was somebody's dad coming out to them and saying,
Yes,
son,
that is someone you better, or else. Like, I just, and talking about the buildup, it does make sense now, as we talked about this dynamic between Rich Swann and Kenny Omega. At one point, we didn't know who was going to be facing Kenny Omega. It could have been Moose. I could see why this works better with Rich than with Moose, because there's a lot of similarities between Kenny's personality and Moose's that maybe would have been a harder dynamic to establish, this good guy, bad guy type of thing. And you have a
True.
very clear good and bad in this. But it still doesn't, but at the same time, it does leave you guessing. Like, Moose is still hanging around this main event title picture, kind of
Yeah.
looming, wondering, just there. His presence gives it just this tad of, just mystery, and even just anticipation of what is going to happen next. Because at the same time too, he came out because of the fact that Rich is the unified champion. So the belt that Moose spent months and months building up to the point where it got reactivated was taken by Rich Swann, and so there's also that invested interest from Moose of the belt that he invested time and energy to defend and to make public again and to get recognized. He doesn't want it getting into the hands of Kenny Omega. So, like you've said,
Yeah.
there's some layers to this that I really enjoyed that they summed up really nicely on this week's episode. And it leaves some anticipation of what's to come. You know, like if Rich Swann loses, Moose is coming after him, and it's not going
Yeah.
to be pretty. And that
Good.
sets up a whole new chapter between Rich Swann and Moose that I'm here for.
Yeah, a couple of things I also want to add too is that, like, even though it's called Unified, they're still considering it titles with an S. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, you say Unified, it's considered one. I mean, when you talk about
That's
WWE, when
true.
they've done it, it was considered, they renamed the title as one, even though you saw representation of two belts. But they're still considering this title. There's also been sort of swirling rumors again about TNA could be brought back at any time. I mean, I pitched that idea like last year,
Yeah, I was
saying
gonna
like,
say
if you need another
you keep
show,
pitching that. You keep pitching that pretty consistently.
yeah. And then look, it's not like I can't let go of the old times, but I mean, like, if you want to add extra content and you want to lure back in that OG crowd, I mean, my co-host Will still says TNA and slips up
People
and says
still
TNA
do.
without saying Impact.
Yeah, I think people still do, and they really rely and leverage that Impact slash TNA history, whether it's on
Yeah.
social media, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's through the Twitch channel,
Shit,
whether
the
it's with
Twitch
some
is the Twitch
merchandise.
is TNA.
Yeah, the Twitch is TNA. Like that's it. Twitch is TNA. That's the shirt right there. But yeah, it does leave a lot, and that hopefully we'll get some more direction on Sunday after the fallout of the match. We know, but I mean, yeah, there's still that big looming question of what is going to happen on Sunday at Rebellion. Like that is the $1 million question that
well,
could
well, well, well,
reshape.
well. Since we're ahead of it still, and obviously we're going to
Mhm.
do our review of it. Talk to me. What happens Sunday, and what does that mean going forward? Give me your
Oh man,
prediction. What does that mean?
yeah. I
Who
mean,
wins and who wins how, and what does that mean come next week?
yeah. I don't know. So there's
Did you freeze? She might have froze. So in the meantime, until she reconnects, I'll just go ahead and give my thoughts about how this match is going to be done come Sunday. In my heart, you know I want Rich Swann to win. It's not even a question. But and again, I'm very, like, I believe there will be some swerve or some gimmick or whatnot. But they've been very adamant that there's going to be a definitive winner. And I think that if it's not a definitive winner, then it devalues the entire thing. And even if Rich Swann has a good match and it puts him over or whatever, I also think that could be slightly problematic as well, because a lot of people still don't know who he is in regards to AEW. But I honestly think, for the sake of the super unpredictable factor, I would like to see Rich Swann win. I would like to see Welcome Back. I would like to see Rich Swann win. I would like to see Rich Swann win clean. And I would like to see Rich Swann show up to Dynamite.
Mhm.
And they're going to have him show up to Dynamite until this rematch occurs at Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing in AEW has been all about the idea of high stakes. And I think this makes sense, that you let Rich Swann create history, but ultimately you run it back at AEW's one of their biggest pay-per-views for the same price. And now you have Rich Swann showing up at Dynamite finally, drawing ratings, cutting promos, doing whatever you may do, putting the company on his back. getting him that proper representation and exposure he deserves all this time, as he becomes one of the focals of that pay-per-view. This is the only way there's a trade-off here, is that Rich Swann is your focal talent going into Double or Nothing. The promos, the promotional material, everything. I think that's how it has to happen. And God bless our soul if it doesn't.
I mean, that's a pretty big ask. You talk about, I mean, to this point, AEW has really put nothing into this. And so the fact that they would even, understandably, if Rich Swann is the champion, then they have to, because that's their champion. But the fact that they haven't put very much into this makes me highly doubt a build-up. Now, I love the idea of this building up to Double or Nothing, because I mean that is truly what that show is all about. Surprises, the game changers in professional wrestling happening at Double or Nothing. I'm more inclined, as much as I would like for Rich Swann to win, I'm still believing that Kenny Omega will win. And okay, I don't think we see him really. I maybe he gets away with a title defense or two, but maybe even just says, "I got it. I don't even really want this," and vacates, and it goes back to Impact, and then Impact. Cleanest way, but there is, going back to you're saying, there's a definitive way of doing it, but I don't see, as much as they built up of, oh, whoever is the champion will defend on both, I don't see that happening. I think that's a ploy to get people to watch. I don't think that that's going to be long-term what ends up happening. And that's maybe I'm very pessimistic, and I'm like, already that negativity is coming. I don't want to believe anything else. I'm already down in the trenches thinking this isn't going to happen. So I'm already thinking worst case scenario.
All right. Well, here's my thing. Like, if Rich Swann wins, he shows up to Dynamite. I mean, and here's the thing. Contractually, if there's a discrepancy with Warner Media and him being on TNT or whatever, if he's the champion, then that should null and void whatever issues they had with the company of some other talent showing up there as a surprise. They would know. I mean, at this point now, Warner Media has to know who's going to be the winner already, because they need to prepare promotional material for it on their side. So, and again, you know, they've been very adamant about not having any more surprise appearances there. With that being said, I think it just makes sense. And there's a couple of reasons why I think it makes sense. Number one, and I'll just cut it 100% straight. Rich Swann being a black male winning this title and the fashion he does it is monumental. And it's a display, a representation that really would send waves throughout the entire world. We've seen what happened with the main event of WrestleMania, the decision that had to be done. And if it wasn't, it wouldn't be where it's at right now with every big media outlet covering it. If they want to think beyond wrestling, this is what you do. This makes perfect marketing sense. So you let them do it. And then you get them over there. And then Rich Swann gets the elevation, the display, representation, and exposure that he deserves. But also, you keep him away from Kenny. But maybe you do give him opportunity to work a few people that he's never got a chance to work. Or you could just have him work the Good Brothers. I mean, if he works the Good Brothers in 2 weeks, hold on, when is Double or Nothing real quick? Let me just check that out real quick.
That's usually around Memorial Day weekend.
It is. Yeah. It's May
about
20
about a month
something.
now. Yeah, about a month. You know, and you're right. Like on AEW television, they've really been playing up, the Bullet Club versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. So they already have this pre-made program
May 30th.
That has really nothing to do with the belt, that they can keep on going while Rich Swann is over here defending the belt on Dynamite on a weekly basis. I mean, so they have opportunity to bring in, which I think would actually be good for the company to have a series of people face Rich Swann. One person who's been very adamant on that side that I think would actually have a great match, who's came to AEW specifically to win championships, Christian Cage. I would like to see Christian Cage versus Rich Swann. If we're fantasy booking this, I mean, that would be a program you could definitely do while Moxley and Omega are still doing their own thing. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of potential to it, but I think that there's a lot of talent on AEW that would also benefit from being in that title picture, and which right now they can't because Kenny Omega's doing his own thing with John Moxley.
Also to flip this around, I mean, again, yeah, if it's 4 weeks until Double or Nothing, then that's just essentially what, 3 matches and a promo appearance, a little come out attack thing that they got to do, maybe 2 matches and 2 of that, whatever, or maybe no matches, but I will hope at least 1, and then you just coast into building that big match. They don't have their big match yet for that, and that is the big match. And you have to think, if you're AEW and you're giving Impact the biggest match potentially of all time, one of the biggest matches of all time. I mean, we'll go down within the top 10 of biggest matches of all time. Well, what do y'all have right now that could actually compete with that? Oh, the Run It Back tour absolutely is in that argument with the fans, with the crowd, with the bigger stadium, and at their one of their biggest pay-per-views in Florida. And Florida can run at 100%, so it could truly be special. It could really, really, truly be special. I think too, what happens here on the flip of what you were saying, now this kind of holds the Impact title still, but that's fine. That's fine. You know why? It's fine because when you think about, well, who is available to be in that title picture, you think about somebody like Eric Young, who I cannot believe worked that last match with a torn ACL. You think about Eddie I'm gonna say Eddie Kingston.
Eddie Edwards, yeah.
who's a face, so it doesn't make sense. Moose, sure, come back and work a match with Moose. That's one person, not a problem. Now that he's back.
And going full circle about what was happening a year ago, we've seen that Impact can still run without the World Championship in a weekly, series. We've seen it before. They could easily continue and run business as usual without the world title for months. They've done it before, and they can do it again if that is what they need to do.
Yeah. So I'm feeling happy. I'm very excited for this. I had to pitch my case for Swan. You brought up the thing about Tony Khan and why they're not going to promote it. They, you did the little thing on Busted Open Radio, which I don't know if people give them enough credit, but they're one of the best shows when it comes down to talking wrestling, professionalism, good storytelling, and good interviews, without a doubt. Because there's a lot of trash out there, but for them, they actually do a good job. And again, this man Eric Young, dude, ungodly to work that match. Oh, I got a comment. Throw it in there real quick. It could be you know how people feel about that guy.
Yeah, I don't think he's around anymore.
Yeah, but I think that, and I think again, for the case of Rich Swann winning, that gives him 4 to 5 weeks of becoming a staple in the wrestling world. That's getting to work in front of fans. Hello. That gets to work at Double or Nothing, their biggest pay-per-view. Kenny Omega losing does nothing. He just gets to be the tyrant he gets in order to get back. You know?
I mean, so also one last thing to throw out there. You talked about the build-up to Double or Nothing, that yes, this match is happening at Rebellion, and there are going to be 2 referees. But that means each referee may make their own decision. And we
don't say that.
But what if this leads to a rematch at Double or Nothing?
Either
and this
way,
match could, could finally be done in front of a crowd. I wouldn't even be mad at that happening again at Double or Nothing.
Yeah. Before we leave, I need to give a huge disclaimer that if this match ends in a pile of trash bag, garbage fire, juice from the very bottom scraped up, and somehow, some way, they just completely botched this thing, I will not be available for reviews next week, and that's that.
Whoa, Nazir putting it out there now, Impact Wrestling. He's putting it out there right now.
I just can't. I can't. If they do, I swear.
I'm gonna hold you to it. I'm gonna hold you to it. I would love to review with you, but I stand by your decision.
Oh, you can not. I will give you the keys. You can drive the vehicle. You can even leave it on E when you're done. I'll put gas back in it. But like, I'm trying to tell you, if they, all I know, folks, is this Sunday at Rebellion is going to be must watch. The world will be watching. We'll be watching. We'll be back to review it next week. Good and happy thoughts. And like, I want Swan to win, but if he doesn't, it is what it is. As long as it makes sense. But I feel like my approach here is the right approach. So hats off to Impact and to getting to this monumental point and all they've been doing through the pandemic, working without a crowd, working with all the hiccups and whatnot with their roster, and still get ready to deliver a banger. And for the folks who don't watch Impact, be prepared for a solid day of wrestling. There's going to be some tremendous matches.
Many great matches. Real quick, a triple threat match for the X Division Championship. TJP, Josh Alexander, Ace Austin. That's going to be phenomenal. Like, I think that's going to be such a great match. Deonna Purrazzo versus Tennille Dashwood for the Knockouts Championship. Trey Miguel and Sami Callihan. That's going to be brutal. That's going to be brutal. And there's just like, there's so much more. Those are just kind of like the ones seeping at the top of the bin. Of course, the Good Brothers facing Finjuice for the tag championships. Rachel Ellering making her debut this week. She's going to be teaming up with Jordan Grace to face Fire and Flava for the Knockouts tag titles. The big 8-man tag with Violent by Design, and
everybody left.
Everybody has Eddie. Who is Willie Mack? James Storm.
Yep, and
Petey. No, I forget the fourth one.
I forget the fourth. But everybody left. But
everybody left. Like it is going to be a stacked card. Even though we've just talked about the main event, the rest of the matches on the card are going to be fantastic. It's going to be a really, really great show. People may hopefully buy it for the main, but stay for the entirety. And I think you'll get a really good show, just a great wrestling show.
Yeah. Well, folks, look, again, the pay-per-view's on Sunday, so expect to see our review drop a little bit earlier than that instead of waiting until Friday to review on our regular show. But we will have a lot to talk about because, like, next week we got the aftermath shows on Impact and on Dynamite. So be prepared, man. The world is actually going to change. I know when AEW first was created, they said it was going to change the world, and that could be questionable. But this right here,
prove it. That's prove it. That's it. Now's the time to prove it.
Yeah, exactly. That'll do it, folks. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you all after the conclusion of Impact Wrestling's Rebellion pay-per-view. Tune in. You got to watch it, and then come watch us. All right, y'all. Take care.
Bye-bye.